Well, welcome everyone. Josh with Severe Weather, and happy Thursday to you. Appreciate you joining me this afternoon and evening as we see some cold weather returning to the central and eastern states here, all the way down south as we head towards this weekend. It's going to be a chilly one, but temperatures are going to switch back to warmer as we head towards Christmas next week. A lot of weather to talk about. I'm going to focus on a clipper system that's going to bring snow down into the Great Lakes, Midwest, and even parts of the Northeast before heading out into a bigger storm this weekend over eastern Canada. Then we're going to take a look at the weather for your Christmas holiday next week and beyond. And it will be eventful here across the country. So I appreciate you joining me here. Here's a look at our current temperatures. You can see the cold air is invading the north central states. We're barely above 0 degrees Fahrenheit in North Dakota. That cold begins to sift its way down into the Great Lakes. Teens in Wisconsin this afternoon, 20s in the Northeast, 30s and 40s along the coast, and getting colder as well across parts of the deep south, where yesterday and the day before we were in the 60s and 70s. Now we're down into the 50s and tumbling further as we head towards the weekend. Here's a look at our water vapor image, and you can see the storm system here that is responsible for the colder air, and you can see the trough comes in behind it, sending that cold air down to the south. On the west coast, we do have high pressure over the southwest, but active weather as well in the Pacific Northwest, where we're going to continue to have unsettled weather over the coming days. Down south, though, we're going to be enjoying some cooler temperatures heading down into Florida the next couple of days as drier air makes its way down here after a pretty warm stretch of weather this week. So change is coming, and it's coming quickly here, and we're not done with it yet here next week. Here's a look at areas that are under a winter storm warning in pink. That includes portions of North Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. That's surrounded by wind advisories and winter weather advisories across the upper Midwest. And we also have winter storm watches over portions of southwestern Virginia and East Tennessee. And I expect we're going to see more of this area get filled in here with watches and warnings over the coming days, at least advisories, as we are expecting accumulating snow. Now, colder air sifts down tonight. We'll see the freezing line tonight getting all the way down to the mid-south and well below 0 across the upper Midwest. Pretty cold as well across parts of northern Maine. Now, that's not the end of it. Tomorrow, a cold day for sure, but take a look at the low temperatures tomorrow night. Much of the country, except for the Gulf Coast and the West Coast and Southwest, will be below the freezing mark. Dallas is down to 32, 31 in Atlanta tomorrow night, 33 in Raleigh, 20s in the Northeast, single digits and colder across the upper Midwest. And as we head towards the weekend, it will be a chilly one across much of the Great Lakes and the Northeast. Only in the 40s in places like Nashville and Atlanta and Charlotte, 50s across Florida and Louisiana, 60s in South Texas. And take a look at our low temperatures for the weekend here. Sunday morning will be below 0 across a good chunk here of the Northeast and the Great Lakes. Teens across Boston and just north of New York City and Philadelphia, and lower 20s in Charlotte and Raleigh, and teens in Richmond as well. So a pretty cold weekend on tap. We recover a little bit on Sunday, but next week we do start to warm right back up. We're cracking the freezing mark again here in places like Chicago and Detroit for Monday. Take a look at Tuesday, even warmer across much of the country. 70s return to Florida and Texas, warm in the Southwest. And then your Christmas Day holiday, much of the country is going to be above the freezing mark during the day. And we're not looking at record heat, but as a whole, the country will be well above average. Canada will be well above average as well. And here's the reason why. You can see where our jet stream is positioned. It sends the cold down into the eastern United States right through the weekend, but then it retreats very quickly here on Sunday and especially next week. You can see things getting more active coming in off the west coast here. Moisture returns, and the cold air that has been coming down from eastern Canada is leaving here. We do have a storm in the northeast for Christmas, but then the southern jet takes over. So everything was coming down in this direction. Now we're seeing everything traveling across the southern United States as the cold air source goes away. And that's going to lead to more active weather next week with severe weather, heavy rain possibilities here. It gets worse as we get to the end of the week around California, and that jet stream continues to inch its way northward, sending milder and more unstable air northward here by the time we get to the final weekend of the year. So we've got a lot to talk about. First, I want to focus on our current storm here. You can see the snow will be continuing into the evening hours and then winding down around midnight or just after in the Twin Cities, and then exiting by tomorrow. There may be a little bit more that follows it, but this will not be that big a deal. You can see our snow totals here over the next 60 hours. Generally speaking, between 1 and 3 inches, but locally higher amounts. And that's on top of what's already fallen here this afternoon. So a moderate snowfall across this area. Farther south and east, we are going to see the snow spreading into the Chicagoland area tonight, into Michigan, including Detroit, into northern Indiana. There'll be snow on the ground for the game tomorrow in South Bend, it looks like. And we'll see that snow continuing to spread into western New York, western PA late tonight and early tomorrow, eventually making its way into the remainder of the Northeast Friday afternoon. There'll be some rain down around the Delmarva initially before that change, and I'll zoom in on that in a little bit. This air mass is pretty cold, and because of the dry air that comes in, we actually don't see a whole lot of lake effect. The wind direction doesn't favor that here, so primarily what we call synoptic snow here. That's forced by both the upper level low and the surface low that are be moving through the region here Friday into Saturday. So here's a look at how much snow may fall, and you can see the lakes will come into play here, enhancing that amount of snow. But generally speaking, we're talking between an inch or two and maybe about as much as 5 inches over parts of Wisconsin and Michigan, western New York, and northwest PA. Higher amounts in the mountains focused over upstate New York and New England, as well as the central and southern Appalachians. And we could even see a little bit of snow around portions of Indianapolis and Dayton and those areas. Columbus could see about an inch. We could see just over an inch north of Indianapolis. West Lafayette could see a couple of inches. Chicagoland, closer to the south side of town, we're going to see less than a couple of inches. The north side could see up to 3. Near the Wisconsin border. So this will be a decent snow for us, but not the biggest storm, certainly. As this moves into New England tomorrow, we are going to see snow picking up. It probably won't do a whole lot along the coast until our next area of low pressure forms offshore, and that may not happen in time for this to be a big deal for the immediate coastline of New England. You can see our snow totals here. Going to be very unusual to see random areas that could pick up close to a coating to an inch here tomorrow and then more at night. But Maine kind of gets, I don't want to say hosed, but you kind of miss out on the best snow. Now, we're going to have to watch this band as it comes up the Bay of Fundy into Nova Scotia. If that backs into Maine, we could see totals going up quite a bit here Saturday night. And you can see here on the RGEM, that's a Canadian model, most of the snow here is going to be falling across New Brunswick, PEI, and the majority of Nova Scotia. Now, it'll start as rain, but then we'll go over to snow here by the evening hours on Friday, and we'll pick up Friday night and Saturday morning as well. There'll be some sleet here. That's this orange, and even some ice potential over portions of Newfoundland. So keep that in mind if you are watching from Eastern Canada. This is not just going to be a snowstorm, but going to be a big mess, and one of our biggest systems so far here this winter. You can see snow totals through the weekend here are going to be coming up quite a bit once we get into Nova Scotia, locally up to 30 or so centimeters, more in the mountains. Portions of Newfoundland could see up to 50 centimeters, and just a mess. Even around Halifax, we're talking about 20 centimeters of snow. But it is going to avoid the Avalon Peninsula here. Probably too warm to see anything but rain or mixed precipitation. Farther south, we are going to see more snow in the mountains as well here. Not a big storm here, but we could see a few sprinkles in the morning. Moving through the Piedmont regions of the Carolinas and Virginia, then heading to the coast in the afternoon. It'll turn colder for sure by tomorrow evening. Then we see more instability, so maybe another round of light rain comes through the area. But by then, we're talking more significant snow falling in the ski areas and in the mountains here by tomorrow late in the afternoon, especially in the evening here. It will continue into Saturday morning across the Smokies and even beyond that across West Virginia and Western Maryland up until about early in the day on Sunday before the drier air takes over. Here's a look at what our snow potential looks like here. Some of these numbers are going to be kind of inflated, but we could see over a foot falling in the mountains of West Virginia once again. It's been a great start to winter there. We could even see a little bit over parts of northern Maryland, eastern Maryland, and the Delmarva here. Generally speaking, it won't be much, mostly on the grass. You have to get back into the mountains to really see any kind of significant snow, but even parts of Middle Tennessee and Kentucky could see another covering of snow on the ground here. Most of that's going to be later tomorrow and tomorrow night. Now, looking ahead, I had mentioned it already. Here's the cold. It's pretty significant, but it's in and out of here. And by the first half of next week, we're all pretty much above average once again. We do see maybe some cold air damming stuck in parts of the Northeast into Christmas Day, so it'll still be kind of a raw day, but overall, the moisture picks up. We see that warm up coming and a very warm end to the month of December for most, but there is colder air lurking again, and the potential that we go back and forth quite a bit here followed by maybe a more substantial shot of cold coming. But that's probably not going to be before the 4th of January. Taking a look at the GFS operational model here, you can see our storm. It jumps through the Ohio Valley, then kind of falls apart, and a new low takes over off the coast of Virginia here tomorrow afternoon. That heads up into Atlantic Canada, and that's where things get dicier here. On the way out, though, New England does get hit a little bit here, especially far eastern Maine, according to the GFS. And NAM was not as impressed, but the GFS shows there will be some of that. And then I think by Sunday, we're pretty much in the clear. We do have another clipper to watch in the upper Midwest here, Sunday night and Monday, and that will bring a little bit more snow into some of the same areas of the Northeast and Canada here for Tuesday. But that cold air is going to stick around, but the moisture is going to ride up and over it. And eventually we see really what could be just an ugly week here with rain in the south, maybe a few thunderstorms, maybe some ice left over here as the cold air is still sticking around Thursday into early Friday. And then just a lot of cloud cover and a lot of rain next weekend. So it really looks pretty ugly here. Now, the GFS looks a lot more daunting than some of the other models for the 29th and 30th down here in the southeast. But severe weather is something we're going to have to keep an eye on. We saw what happened yesterday and the day before. But this is kind of a wild scenario, not one the other models are showing right now. So the GFS says there's going to be something else to watch. But again, this is pretty far off in the future, so it could change. Here's a Canadian looking at next week, and it's going to be wet in the southeast Christmas Day into Thursday. The Canadians more focused on more of an ice threat over parts of central and eastern PA, New York, and North Jersey here, starting on Thursday and continuing, unfortunately, into Friday across New England. It looks really ugly here. So while temperatures end up above average, it's still cold enough for this junk to just be in the area right until the beginning of next weekend. So if you do have plans to travel after Christmas, you're going to want to watch this pretty closely. In the west, you're going to see a lot of rain moving in as well to the west coast, heavy mountain snow, round after round of that happening here right on through next week. It doesn't really improve much through the 29th, unfortunately. Finally, we'll look at the European model here before we talk about some longer-term forecasts. And it looks different than the GFS, not surprisingly here, but looks like a pretty decent system here on Thursday evening with potentially a few heavier storms in East Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and up into maybe far southern Missouri. That system moves northeast and kind of fades. Another system gathers in Texas, and we could have more active weather for New Year's Eve into New Year's Day in the eastern United States. But looks a lot more uncertain once we get to January 1st of next year. Here's a look at the upper levels, and you can see the cold in the blue, the warmer ridging up aloft here in the red and orange. And you can see here that big ridge takes over central and eastern Canada and shuts out the source of cold air for Christmas Day. And that will build more into northeast Canada, allowing more unsettled weather to come in underneath of it. So here we have to watch things in the central states over the weekend and then in the east beyond that. But you can see we do shift into a much colder pattern here at some point, maybe during the first, second, or third week of January. You can see things are going to be a lot more active. Winter storm chances may be climbing at this point. Colder air will return, and January could be pretty unsettled. We'll probably have a thaw at some point in there, but it may take a couple weeks for that to happen. Here's a look at temperature anomalies. This chill goes away quickly, and next week will be pretty warm across the country, even more extreme across Canada. And then as we move into January, the west turns colder to begin, and then the southeast and eastern U.S. turn colder from the weekend and on. And the second and third weeks of January could be pretty chilly for most of us here before a brief warm-up comes to the plains here at the end of the month. Here's a look at the Arctic Oscillation, and it will be spending a lot of time in the negatives as we head into January. This is about the first, and this is the second to third week of January. We will be in the negatives, meaning colder air does spill over into the Western Hemisphere. And it may take a while before we warm back up at the end of January. The Eastern Pacific Oscillation is positive, which is promoting that trough in the west and that unsettled weather, but it goes negative for early January, meaning that the Pacific moisture gets shut off and colder air is allowed to return. That's where we are today, and that's where we're going to be again here in about a week and a half to 2 weeks. Takes a while. So these are definitely more favorable looking for winter invasions across the central and eastern states. Now, the NAO is positive now, but it does also go negative here at the end of the month. And so, again, things are looking somewhat favorable for winter mischief here sometime in the 4th to maybe 20th of January timeframe. And it may not just be one system, but maybe multiple systems. And if we take a look at the longer range snow forecast, don't take these too seriously, but you are going to see things are going to start to look a little bit better here after the 7th of January across the Northeast. And eventually you can see around the Great Lakes and New England and maybe even the Mid-Atlantic area, things start looking a little bit more promising for something here towards the middle of the month of January. Now, no guarantees, of course, but this is definitely a lot better looking than what December has looked like across the Northeast and the Ohio Valley. So stay tuned for that. But as always, I appreciate everybody's time today. I thank you, and I ask you, if you haven't yet, to become a subscriber. I'm going to try to be back on tomorrow. It's a very busy time of year here, but when the weather is certainly a factor and I'm not traveling, I plan to do videos for you all, about 15, 20-minute videos updating you on these storms. So I thank you all for your time. I pray everybody stays healthy, and I want to give all the honor and glory to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The Lord is good. Paul tells us in Romans 8:37, 38, and 39, despite all these things, overwhelming victory is ours through Christ who loved us. And I am convinced that nothing can ever separate us from God's love, neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither our fears for today nor our worries about tomorrow. Not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love. No power in the sky above or in the earth below. Indeed, nothing in all creation will ever be able to separate us from the love of God that is revealed in Christ Jesus our Lord. And that is the good news. I hope it brings you joy today. This is a joyful time of year, but I know a lot of us struggle. But my hope is in the Lord, and he brings me joy through Jesus Christ. I hope you all have a great night, and please be safe, and we'll catch up with you all soon. God bless you.